Today's tech news moves fast, but understanding it shouldn't be hard. That's why Snarful Solutions Group brings you Connecting the Dots, where we break down what's happening in tech and why it matters to you. Now, let's dive in with your hosts.
Okay, it's Wednesday, May 14th, 2025. Welcome to Connecting the Dots. I'm Alex here with Morgan. We're coming to you from Snarful Solutions Group right here in Sacramento. Today, we're going to unpack three key tech stories that are making waves and, figure out what they might actually mean for you.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of Sacramento, it is a beautiful day out there, aiming for a high of 79 degrees. Quick look at the markets. Yesterday, Tuesday the 13th, the Dow closed at 421.40.43, and the S&P 500 finished at 5886.55. But yeah, today's focus is definitely tech.
For sure. So first up, Google. They've got some pretty big plans for their Gemini AI model. It sounds like they're planning to weave it into several key platforms later this year. We're talking Wear OS 6, Android Auto, Google TV, even Android XR. This feels, pretty significant, doesn't it? More than just a simple update.
It really does. And I think the first place many of you might notice this is on your wrist with Wear OS 6. I unveiled this at the Google Android show. It's got this modernized and refreshed UI, they're calling it. Think smoother scrolling, some new transition effects, UI elements that kind of expand and retract. It sounds quite dynamic.
Oh, interesting. So like a visual overhaul?
Yeah, definitely a visual upgrade. They've redesigned buttons, and you can even set a UI color theme based on your watch face now. Kind of a playful, animated feel, they said. But the really big news for Wear OS is Gemini actually replacing the current Google Assistant.
Okay, that is big because, let's be frank, the current assistant on Wear OS can be, a bit hit or miss. Slow sometimes, doesn't always get what you're saying.
Exactly. Slow to answer, misinterprets things. It's not always reliable.
Yeah.
So Gemini coming to Wear OS, the promise here is more natural conversations, being able to actually recall information from previous interactions and perform actions with other apps on the watch, kind of like it does on Android phones already.
Right. So instead of just barking single commands, you could maybe have more of a back and forth, like ask for directions, then ask about traffic on the route without starting over.
That's the idea. More conversational, more context aware, the core stuff, tiles, notifications, quick settings, the app drawer that all stays fundamentally the same. But the presentation gets that upgrade, and the underlying intelligence gets a major boost with Gemini.
Okay, so a smarter, better-looking smartwatch experience. And this isn't just for watches, right? You mentioned other platforms.
Correct. Sundar Pichai, Google's CEO, confirmed this during their Q1 earnings call. Gemini's expanding. It's coming to Android Auto, Google TV, and Android XR. And also, interestingly, to tablets and even headphones that connect to your phone.
Huh. We sort of saw hints of this coming, didn't we? Weren't there some app teardowns that found evidence?
Yeah, exactly. People digging into the app code found mentions of Gemini for Wear OS and Android Auto, specifically something called Gemini Live, which early reports suggest is pretty fast and responsive and handles multiple languages well, too.
Gemini Live. Okay, so speed and responsiveness seem key there. So let's connect the dots for listeners. What does this mean for everyday life?
Well, potentially a much smarter, much less frustrating experience across a lot of your devices. Imagine having those more natural voice chats with your watch, like we talked about. Or getting genuinely useful, intelligent assistance in your car through Android Auto. Maybe even smoother interactions with your Google TV or future XR devices.
Yeah, replacing that aging assistant with something more capable like Gemini could really change how useful these things feel day to day.
It really could. A big step up in AI integration across their ecosystem.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Story number 2 takes us into the world of economics and hardware. Intel's CFO, David Zinsner, has been talking about tariffs and, the potential impact on the economy.
Yeah, he's raised some concerns, echoing what we've heard from others, actually. He mentioned these sort of fluid trade policies and regulatory risks are increasing the chance of an economic slowdown and even raising the probability of a recession, which is, quite a statement from a major CFO like him.
Okay. So he's worried about a pullback.
Exactly. A potential pullback in investment and spending. That's the phrase he used. Basically, businesses and consumers getting cautious because of higher costs and just general economic uncertainty tied to these tariffs. And while Intel's production is pretty diverse, which helps a bit, he still anticipates increased costs for them.
So it's affecting their forecasting even.
Apparently so. Their revenue forecast for this quarter has a wider than normal range, and they're attributing that directly to the tariff uncertainty. He even suggested the total market for their chips might shrink if people like you decide to hold off on buying new computers.
That's interesting. And wasn't there also a comment from another Intel exec about consumer behavior potentially changing?
Yes, Michelle Johnston Hulthouse, CEO of Intel Products. She suggested that rising costs might actually push consumers towards laptops or computers with older chips, the less expensive generations. She said customers are kind of hedging their bets with inventory because of these macroeconomic worries and the tariffs.
So people might actively choose older tech to save money if prices go up. That's quite a potential shift.
It is, and it lines up with broader concerns. Zinsner's comments align with projections from J.P. Morgan, for instance, who forecasted a U.S. recession by the end of 2025. Their CEO, Jamie Dimon, also warned about potential financial instability from sweeping tariffs. So Intel's not alone in this concern.
Right. So translating this for everyone listening, what are the potential ripples here?
Well, it's pretty direct, potentially. Increased cost for tech giants like Intel. That could easily mean higher prices for you when you buy electronics, laptops, PCs, other gadgets. And of course, the bigger picture threat of an economic slowdown that could impact jobs, personal finances, that sort of thing.
And even just the idea that the latest tech might become less accessible or that people might opt for older models, that shows how these global trade issues can really filter down to the products available on shelves and what they cost.
Definitely highlights how interconnected everything is. Trade policy impacting the chip in your next computer. Makes you wonder about innovation, too, if spending tightens up.
Okay, for our third story today, let's move into autonomous driving. There's a company called Pony AI making some interesting moves.
Yeah, Pony AI, they're based in Guangzhou. They're definitely signaling ambitions for global expansion. One big sign is they've confidentially filed for an IPO over in Hong Kong. This comes after they raised a pretty significant amount, around $413 million, in a U.S. IPO back in November 2024. So they're building capital.
And they're looking to take their robotaxi services international, using China's auto industry strength to keep costs down.
That seems to be the strategy. They actually claim their robotaxis are 20 to 30% cheaper to produce than, say, U.S. competitor Waymo's. They put that down to a more integrated supply chain and just a whole ecosystem supporting this tech in China.
And they're showing off new tech too, right? New systems, new vehicles?
Absolutely. Yeah. At the Shanghai Auto Show recently, they unveiled their 7th-gen autonomous driving system, plus 3 robotaxi models that are designed for mass production, developed with partners like Toyota, BAIC Group, and GAC. Big names involved.
Mass production is key, I guess, for getting costs down and actually deploying these things widely.
Totally. They plan to start mass production in the third quarter of this year, and they've reportedly cut production costs by something like 70% compared to their last generation. There's a huge drop. They really anticipate wider adoption as these costs keep falling.
70%. Yeah. Wow. And the other big piece of news was the Uber partnership, wasn't it?
Yes. That's potentially huge for visibility and access. Uber is partnering with Pony AI. The plan is to deploy Pony AI's robotaxis on Uber's ride-hailing platform, starting initially in a key Middle East market later this year, but with plans to expand internationally after that.
So you might eventually book a Pony AI robotaxi through the Uber app.
That's the goal. Now, during the pilot phase, the vehicles will still have a safety operator on board, but the aim is to transition to a fully autonomous commercial launch eventually.
Okay, so bringing this home for the listener, what's the takeaway? Self-driving taxis getting closer.
It certainly signals that future. Companies like Pony AI expanding globally, partnering with giants like Uber. It suggests robotaxis could become, more commonplace. Seeing them available through a familiar app like Uber could make them feel much more accessible. And potentially, down the line, a more affordable transport option, especially with those cost reductions they're achieving.
Right. The technology seems to be maturing, becoming more viable from a cost perspective, which is crucial for actual rollout.
Exactly. It opens up all sorts of questions about city planning, regulations, the impact on existing transport. But the tech is clearly moving forward.
Okay, so let's do a quick recap of what we covered in this deep dive. First, we looked at Google's big plans for Gemini AI, integrating it into Wear OS 6, Android Auto, Google TV, and Android XR. That promises a much smarter, more intuitive experience across those devices.
Then we shifted to the economy, discussing Intel CFO David Zinsner's warnings, concerns about tariffs, trade policies leading to a potential economic slowdown, maybe even recession, and how that could impact tech prices and availability for you.
And finally, we explored Pony AI's moves in the autonomous driving space, their global expansion plans, the Hong Kong IPO filing, that crucial partnership with Uber, all pointing towards a future where robotaxis might become a more common and maybe cheaper way to get around.
Yeah, 3 really different stories, but all showing significant shifts happening right now in the tech landscape.
Absolutely. And these are, of course, just a few snapshots of what's happening out there. We really hope this deep dive gave you a clearer picture of how these trends might actually impact your own life. We are here to help here at Snarful, so reach out on our website if you have any more questions.
That's a wrap on today's top stories. Remember, tech doesn't have to be complicated, and we're here to help connect the dots. If you've got questions or want to learn more, visit us at snarful.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.